We're going to show you some data on the design-centric consumer. This is the new affluent in this country. And it's important because not only are they the youngest boomers and the oldest Gen Xers, and they attitudinally are very different than the solidly boomer population, but they have a totally different psychographic makeup. And if you can imagine thinking about this person who's 47, they also expect very different things and behave very differently, for better or for worse. And as it regards the design trade, we're making sure that, and when I say we, Dwell, we're making sure that we share with you this data that we've been collecting since 2009. A longitudinal study that gives you, hopefully, the tools to help shape and fine-tune your business so that you are the most successful possible and that you then have a much better time and enjoy your profession even more, being able to garner the attention and ultimately have these clients, these most affluent clients, as your partners. And that probably is a word you're going to see a lot here. For today's session, we thought it important to bring to you some context, and we have two amazing designers here from the Los Angeles area who are going to tell you a little bit about their own experiences, and they'll have short presentations, and then we'll go into some Q&A. I've got a couple reasonably provocative questions, and then I want to open up to the audience. So how many of you here are here to get your continuing education credit? Wonderful. Those of you who are not, you might now consider the profession, and then you can count that credit next year. All right. So when I do get to the end of my segment, I will introduce my very capable designers here, and I know that even after this session, you will want to ask them a lot of questions because I have learned a great deal from them as we have prepared for this panel. So without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about why it's important to discuss the changing landscape of the design profession and the business of design. Because truly, nothing is business as usual, and I don't mean just because there are economic changes or because the environment has changed and technology has continued to be democratized. I should have brought my Google Glass with me that I wore all day yesterday if you saw me, so I could just tap my temple and call my assistant or send her a text and then keep walking as people looked like I had just landed from another planet. But, you know, in about a year, nobody will think anything of it with a lot of people walking around with Google Glass. So much has changed, and that means that everything about consumer behavior changes with it. The new affluents are different, but then again, they always have. F. Scott Fitzgerald said, the rich are different. Well, they really are now because of the changes that I just pointed out, and because the attitudes and behaviors, even more than the demographic changes, are what, as design professionals, you simply must pay a great deal of attention to. My objective here is to make sure that you are able to look at our research with the key idea in mind that we have come up with ideas in a context, and it's much more about the why than the what. We didn't decide, Dwell didn't decide to get into the research business so that we could be one more body of data about which you could then dig in and find some gems that might help you. We really went in to find the information that allowed us to help tell the story that will be important to you in your jobs. When we asked specific questions around design pros, and we did dig into this data much more deeply than we do usually with regard to design professionals, specifically for Dwell on Design, for this and for tomorrow's CEU also, was to really look at insights, best practices, and things that will help you build your business. Dwell was founded on the premise that we needed to help champion the profession of design, that we needed to figure out how to make sure that more than 4% of the homes in this country used an architect to be built, and that more than 20% of remodeling is done with a design professional. We'd like to see all those numbers at 50% and above. And I think that the news I have to show you is that we haven't come a long way, but instead of being kind of, well, God, then maybe it won't change, let's look at it as an opportunity to learn more here and figure out what can we do then, what tools can we employ in order to make sure that we do raise those numbers and that the partnership between the design-savvy consumer and yourselves is really something that grows quite handsomely in the next 2 years. I'm going to make sure that I show you the attitudes and behaviors along with the role that they say, that the affluent consumer says, that they want you to have with them. What defines that relationship? What are the characteristics? And then I will show you some of the resources that they rely on, and some of them are competitive and some of them are complementary. So the key themes emerging from this survey done are trust, listening, creativity, managing expectations, great marketing, collaboration. Everything about this you could sum up into one word. Focus on having a very clear and distinct and valuable relationship with your client. Approach this so that when they think of hiring, and they do constantly, their personal trainer and their personal chef and their personal shopper and all of those other things that they wouldn't dream of doing without, that a designer is on that list. Not just when they're ready to go into a project, not just when they think that it's time to refresh something and, oh, now let me go find someone, but they should have a relationship with you that transcends that episode called a remodel or a home build and stay with you all the time so that the design vocabulary is something that is just a part of the relationship, and ultimately everything you do really expresses their authenticity in your work. It is all about design, business, and marketing, right? It's all about understanding that aesthetics and how somebody likes the way it feels or the way it looks is important, but it is such a small part of the overall project management and the way that the relationship really unfolds. What I also am so pleased, since our grand journey as a consumer population of 2008 until 2012, it wasn't a whole lot of fun. I know that many people continued to grow their business at that time, which can often be the most cost-effective time to build your business, but there's no doubt about it. The pain felt like no other if you were younger than 60. Right? No? Did anybody get through this last 5 years pain-free? Okay, I didn't see a lot of nodding heads, so I thought, all right, we need to follow all of you through your businesses. But the truth of the matter is that what we are seeing is an optimism we haven't seen since 06 to 08. And therefore, a great deal more spending. A number of projects that are coming online, not only in residential, but in commercial, in multifamily, and we see that across the country. They are so much more optimistic, this design-savvy consumer. And remember, we're talking about someone who has a household income of $300,000 or above. And for some of you, it may say, well, that's not a very affluent person. Well, if you're sitting in Los Angeles or New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, it isn't perhaps what you consider as the most affluent. But if you consider that data is normalized for an entire population, that is, because you're talking about the person in Keokuk, Iowa, and in Omaha, Nebraska, and in San Francisco, New York, etc. We know that these are very independent thinkers. They absolutely want to make sure that everything on which they embark, again, whether it's a refresh or a brand new home, is something that they look to about the intent. What are they expressing? It isn't just because they feel like buying a new chair or painting their bathroom a different color. It goes a whole lot deeper than that, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about why they want to do these things and why they're not sure, if you're a design professional, they want to do them with you. A little bit about, so here is the median and average data. 47 years old, 216,000 plus as a median. They're employed, and they have a college education or higher. They have an investment in home far outpaces the general affluent population. So when we cut this data, know that we track the general affluent population and then this new affluent, or the design-centric consumer. And we know that they have increased spending for all discretionary categories. What, in a number, the slide I didn't show you, and I apologize, was that we're talking about 8.2 million heads of household who plan to spend $636 billion. And I don't mean on creature comforts, I mean on discretionary spending. So there's a lot of opportunity to capture those dollars. And that they have increased their interest in spending that money on home improvements and renovations, and then a little bit further down, furnishing and home decor items. I don't know if any of this surprises you, but a lot of times when we talk about affluence, we think about bling, we think about luxury and jewelry, and I will tell you that this emerging design-centric consumer, I said, pay attention to the psychographics and their values and behaviors. What's true is that they love the finer things in life, they just like them differently, and for them, luxury is not a word they find terribly relevant. It suggests more of a veneer. And actually, the denotation in Merriam-Webster is a temporary pleasure. It doesn't suggest the gravitas of something like prestige. So they have the money, they spend the money, but they're spending it differently. They are absolutely design-centric, this population. They're tech-savvy, they're independent thinkers, they're busy, they're discerning, and yet, even with the money they have, they're value-conscious, they have an understated affluence, and social status is truly unimportant. And this means, an example I would give you, is that the badge value that an appliance or a piece of furniture or a car once had for what the pure boomer population admired, now may not have that same luster. Or if it does, it comes under much greater scrutiny. That the rigor with which this population researches and investigates these brands, and perhaps your companies if you're here with the manufacturer, is beyond anything we've seen. And Dwell gets these questions often. Tell me, they will say to me in an email, I'm interested in buying brand X. Do you know what their social responsibility policy is? Do you know how much of their product is made here? Where else they source products? What their diversity policy is? I get questions that you wouldn't think had to do with what the company made or if they were about sustainability. It goes much deeper. So very discerning, which also means that they're not anytime soon going to give up any of this self-confidence and assuredness and ability to find information anywhere that it's available. They're not going to give that up or yield any of that to you. They're going to expect you to have as much of it and to work with them as a partner. So they notice design in everyday life. And that means that they seek good design in everything that they do. They don't get out of bed and say, I'm really enjoying getting out of my frette sheets and stepping into my, beautiful Hermes slippers, but it is simply in their subconscious that everything that they do, they seek good design. This is a brand cloud. It shows you the 75 brands that they mentioned unaided. They mentioned 692, and these were the top 75. Now, what I could do an entire course on this brand cloud, and we could go into the data behind each of these of these brands. We don't have to